Okay.
Hi guys, welcome to Periodic Conversations. Today I have Griffin Anderson with me.
All right.
And so Griffin is a 32-year-old father of his son Kessler. He's a heavy equipment operator for 14 years now. He lives with his partner and her 3-year-old daughter. He enjoys music, philosophy, and the outdoors. And he was diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder, at the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic. And after he'd recently broken up with his partner at the time, who had also been dealing with mental health crisis. And Griffin says, my whole thing, I guess, as a human post-diagnosis and moving forward after a lot of problematic behavior was accountability and healing past wounds, being a good father and partner and a good, kind human, even though I'm usually pretty scared of human interactions. I don't blame you. I fully understand that. So yeah, thank you so much for being here today, Griffin. I'm really looking forward to discussing more about BPD because I also myself don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's actually one of those mental health like things that's like a lot of people don't. There's a lot of people that have it, and a lot of people that like don't know a lot about it. So, and they're kind of the people that have it, like they don't. It's not that they don't like tell people about it, but like there's like a misconception about it and stuff like that. So like it's not a big conversation piece like severe depression or like ADHD or like anxiety or like any of those like more serious ones, or I shouldn't say serious, but like more out in the open ones, I should say. Like it's talked about less, but a lot of people actually have it, and like the diagnosis rate is like, as we're going to talk about later, is like really really high for women compared to men. So it's just like it's pretty crazy, and it's like it's a really difficult, challenging thing to live with, especially with people who aren't diagnosed with it, because they have a lot of behaviors and like things that they do that they don't really understand why they're doing it, and they just like chalk it up to other things that they like. The behavior is actually the thing that is like they associate like all of their patterns with. It's not actually like the mental illness or whatever that they have, in my opinion, or like what I've experienced or what I've seen. So that's yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, interesting for sure. So what did your diagnosis look like?
So just around the beginning of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, I split up with my partner, and we had been seeing each other for a while, and I had like exhibited behaviors like avoidant behaviors or like emotional regulation like issues and stuff like that. And when we split up, she's like, you should just out of like not like in a mean way or anything like that, but she was like, you should, like go see like someone, because I think you might have a thing. I don't know what it is, but like you. And I'd always kind of thought like like there's been things in my like when I was a young man that I had like problematic behavior that I had done, and it was very what's the like it was problematic in the sense that like I would do things to like so people wouldn't abandon me or whatever, because that's like one of the hallmark traits of people who have BPD. There it's like abandonment issues, like people have left them in their past life or like past in like when they're younger or whatever, usually when they're children, like the like childhood trauma is usually someone like leaving them, and then on top of that like just general kinds of like I don't want to say abuse, because like well yeah it is abuse, but like you know what I mean, like it's abusive patterns that like affect kids, and then it usually evolves into borderline personality disorder as like you get older and stuff like that. So not all the time, but like for the most part, like you won't hear of too many like children, or I haven't seen too many children that have borderline personality disorder. It's mostly like I gotta say like probably from the youngest that I've seen, like low teens, and then going up to me, I'm like 33. And I know there's people that are much older than me that have borderline personality disorder, but like those the age range is like that I've noticed is like a lot of younger 20-year-old people have it, and they're experiencing it and they're going through it, and they like a lot of people are undiagnosed and stuff. So it's a crazy community. Like I'm not like saying that all BPD people are crazy or anything, but like it's just a lot of information, a lot of like emotions, because it's an emotional regulation thing. So
Okay.
um, anyway, so I got diagnosed right around the COVID. I just basically went into I can't remember what the center is. Access 24/7. That's the one in Edmonton.
Okay,
You can actually use the you can phone them, you can look it up online or whatever, and then they take you to it's like the Anderson Clinic downtown, and
okay,
that's where I diagnosis. And it took a few weeks, and then they referred me to the Alberta hospital after that.
okay.
And that was I spent a little bit of time at the Alberta hospital, not like as an inpatient or anything, but like just doing group for a little while. And then I went private sector after that. Like I went just started going to like a therapist, like a I guess she's a psychologist. She's like a psychologist. So I went to a psychologist. Her name is Zahara Diego, I think, and or Domingo, sorry. And she works at Egger Psychological, and that's where I go all the time now to get regular therapy sessions. I've been going for since the pandemic, basically. So basically, a few months after everything opened up, I would say probably around August, the first time everything opened up, I started going to therapy again. It was all online, so I could have went earlier. I was just, everyone was shuttered in, and
Yeah.
I was feeling through. I a lot of my the initial like diagnosis and stuff like that. Like I tried medication and stuff like that, and um, I don't discredit medication ever. I want people to always explore all avenues with mental illness.
Mhm.
But for me, like it just wasn't. It didn't work out for me. Like I couldn't take it. It didn't sit well with me. It didn't help me. It didn't help me function or like do the things that I thought it was supposed to do. It actually made me feel worse. And I know a lot of people say it makes you feel worse before it makes you feel better, but like it was really bad. And I was going through a lot of like really tumultuous upheaval as a lot of people were in the world. But like I just split up with my fiance at the time, and then like a bunch of other stuff going on in my life. Like I had my kids still, and then I didn't have a job. Everyone else didn't have a job, and then the Serb thing was like I didn't get Serb, so like that was a whole. But anyway, it, the most of the mental like health diagnosis, like my BPD diagnosis, was pretty good. Like the diagnosis was pretty straightforward, which I heard a lot of people have a really, really hard time getting diagnosed. And all I can say to people that are having a really, really hard time getting diagnosed, just keep trying. Don't ever stop. And you have to advocate for yourself 110% always. Especially like me, I'm a man. So I had someone say, hey, you should you know, go get that done, or go get checked out. And it was someone that had the wherewithal to say, you should go. It's a mental health thing, I think. So you should go get that checked out. And I just, I had pretty good support back then.
Mhm.
My family, like my community at the time, was pretty good. So I appreciate them at the time for that. Like they really helped me get through my diagnosis, and that's a big thing. A part of a diagnosis, I think if you have a community that's willing to stand beside you really closely with you, you can move mountains. But like when you're dealing with a mental illness diagnosis, that's a really big one for people. And like for me as a man, and like a dude, and like just a dad, and like you know what I mean, just like all of these things, these labels that we put on ourselves with like mental illness and like having borderline personality disorders, like pretty scary, right? And
Mhm.
it's like because it's a personality disorder, like, and people don't really know what that means, but like it's like I have really really highs and really really lows, and I cannot emotionally regulate anything at all. It leads me to do really risky behavior. It can make me I do something called splitting on people, where I love you 1 second, and then the next second I think you're like the worst human ever, and I just like could I think you're disgusting. But really it's more all of these things. And it's like for the past however long my diagnosis has been, it's all been like just a lot of when these things happen, it's like more about me than it is about the other person or anything else that's going on. Like some things definitely are triggering. Like there's definitely triggers that everyone has. And like I've again, like the community, the borderline personality disorder community that I've been around, they have been really, really lovely with all of the information they have, but they are just as in the dark as I am. You know what I mean? Like we all have people, like we all do, well, not, I shouldn't say all of us, but a good portion of us do like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness, all of these different types of techniques. And like we're still pretty, like So
Yeah, I understand that too. I've had some, I have a psychologist and a psychiatrist along
mhm.
with a life coach. So I know exactly what you mean when
Yeah.
you are around these people, but they give you the tools. And CBT was one of the cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the best things that you can really go about where you dissect a
Mm.
scenario and you see exactly why that happened and where you can go from that. And then you can actually read back, okay, so where do I sit with this and what was the trigger? And then you can move forward with, coming across the same sort of thing in your future, which is CBT is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, like CBT and like mindfulness is like it's weird when you it's it's funny the moniker I've always been told growing up and like when I was just like in like my job, my career and stuff like that, starting on my career, just like slow down, slow down and think about it. But like literally, it's all you have to do. And like, there's this other one too that my therapist literally tells me it's called stop, whatever. And you like literally stop,
Yeah.
like take like a moment or whatever, and then like they observe and then like proceed or whatever. So like all of these things are like they're just like stopping and like you have to like literally just like take into account like what are the things that are going on around you, like how are you going to move forward in a way that you want, like it's so weird because it's like almost like self-actualization, but it's not, it's a brain game that you're playing,
Hmm.
really, you know what I mean? So um
I just
it's
heard about, sorry to interrupt you. I just heard about another one too today, actually. I was just doing some Googling and it is, what is it? Um, so you stop for three. Is it see? Yeah, looking around your environment to identify
mhm,
three objects, three sounds, and then moving three body parts.
mhm.
So it's an idea of for people with anxiety or when you come up against like a difficult scenario, you stop and you do three, three, three.
That's like a ground size. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, I thought it was really neat. Yeah, so I'm just gonna repeat it one more time so everybody can kind of hear that. So it's just you stop and identify three objects, three sounds, and three body parts. So cool.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and like that's part of another like a tool. My it's funny we're just like talking about therapy tools right now. But another one that my therapist, she's really really lovely. She talked about like different states of mind. So usually people are like usually in three states of mind. There's the like the emotional mind, there's the intellectual mind, and then there's like the wise mind. So like the emotional mind is, you have all your emotions and you're all pent up or crazy or whatever, like fired up, like or sad. And then there's your intellectual mind where you're intellectualizing everything. You're like, like everything is logical, everything makes sense, like scientific brain, like the whole thesis, the antithesis, like all of that stuff like makes sense to you.
Mhm.
But when you put all together, then you become wise, you become like a sage, you know science and the emotional, the heart. So I know I keep saying science, it's just like the most literal thing I can think of. But
I
uh
know what you mean.
yeah, but like so like she says like a good thing to do is to try and keep track of where you are in those at the time of day, like where you are, like are you emotional, are you intellectual, are you both, put together, like where, and she's like watch your pattern throughout the day, like how it changes, and like where you go each day, maybe check a week, and like the pattern is actually weird how like very on schedule my pattern is. For a long time my pattern was right on schedule. I was really really emotional in the morning, very very intellectual and logical in the afternoon, very very wise or back to emotional in the evening depending on how my afternoon went. So um and that's like the weird loops you find yourself in, like this weird emotional loops as a person with borderline personality disorder, like especially if you're dealing with trauma, or you're dealing with like an event, like you cause, like me personally, like as a person with borderline personality disorder, like I caused myself my own problems, you know what I mean, like, and a lot of people with borderline personality disorder, they do cause themselves their own problems,
Hmm.
even though they're a victim of trauma or a victim of abuse or whatever. And that's like a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people with borderline. It's saying sorry and and knowing that you're probably the progenitor of your own problems as an adult. You know what I mean? Like you made those choices. So that's a big one, especially as a, you know, as an adult and having a mental illness. You can't skirt away from your problems because you have a mental illness. Like you have to face it. If not, that should make you more resilient because you got this extra thing you got to deal with. I know that's like such a cop out, but
But I know what you mean though. And at the same time, we have to be, I don't know, aware of where we're at and being able to, yes, walk our lives with knowing, hey, we have this extra thing that maybe we need to be more aware of than say another person may not have, you know, BPD or anxiety or depression or whichever, you know, you want to look at. So
yeah.
it's a smart way to look at it, honestly. And it's to be aware about your surroundings and who you are and taking care of yourself first and foremost.
And
But
that's a hard one for like most people. Like I would say most neurodivergent people, knowing who you are is like a hard one. It doesn't matter what spectrum of neurodivergency you're on, if you're like autistic or you're borderline or you're, like if you're literally dissociative identity disorder, like, you know what I mean? Like all of them, like you don't know who you are, and that's people that are neurotypical, they have such strong identities. And I think that's something we crave as neurodivergent people is we want to have, me, like
yeah,
I want to, and you're so empathetic, you care about other people, and that makes you sad, and that makes you, like you think about things deeper and more compassionately, but you get stuck in your own head and maybe you have a chemical imbalance. It's just coming to like terms with a lot of these things is like, especially like, it's hard, but you do it.
yeah,
And
well, it's exactly. And so then what does your healing look like or your acceptance with being diagnosed with BPD?
uh it's hard, like accepting like accepting it was the first year was really hard. It was like it was because I was like, oh, like it's just me. It's just I how did I change? I just have there's a 2 3 letters that I got put in front of my medical, you know chart or whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean. And then the craziest part of like about it was losing all my skills. Like I lost a bunch of like it's weird. You get this thing where you like lose intelligence. I find, or not. Shouldn't say intelligence, but you are so you mask for so long. You've been masking for so long, and then you finally can let go, and then you kind of like your brain kind of has to like reset and rework itself because it's like, oh, now you don't have to hide. You don't have to like play this game anymore, and that's like really emotionally upsetting for someone who like can't emotionally regulate new situations. Like, or there's a something upset me, and it just like upset me. It wasn't like a crazy protruding thing, but it just takes me back to a place that was like some. Oh, that's my cat. If you can hear my cat, sorry, she's like coughing. But like it takes me back to a place that's like not like, like a place where was that was like not a good place for like little me was there,
Yeah.
and I don't want to go back there. So I do everything in my power not to do that. And
Hmm.
so I like but coming to like terms with my diagnosis, I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't run away from
Hmm.
those things anymore. So like therapy was really good. The accepting part was, I think it was harder for me. Like even now, like my accepting came with a lot of like loss and stuff like that too. Like I lost my grandpa like right after like how long ago was that now? Like 2020, yeah, 2021. So the year after, the first year after. So like that was shitty. Like, you know what I mean? That he was my dude. He's the man I like model my manliness after. And he was like the most kind, gentle, giant soul. Like he was just like a big hulking Saskatchewan farm boy, but he was like had in, and you know what I mean? Like he's just this big, beautiful man. And he died. And that was like that was part of my identity, you know what I mean? So like that was part of me losing my identity on top of me getting diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and then being like, oh, before that I was like, I was a guitar player and I was a hiker and I was, a construction worker and all these things. But then after I got diagnosed, I was just this guy with borderline personality disorder. I didn't know who I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Like I was all of these things that I accumulated, but I wasn't really like looking at who I actually was. And
Yeah.
then when I looked at that, I was like, holy shit, like, like I'm a really broken human being. Like I dealt with a lot of really painful like things, toxic people, and I just did it because I just wanted them to love me. You know what I mean? And the whole shtick, with borderline is people, you just want to be loved.
Mm.
And I think love is a cantankerous thing, because like how do you how do you give love when you're so sick in the head? You know what I mean? And like, I shouldn't say sick in the head, but like mentally ill, that you can't love yourself. And that's that thing that like RuPaul says or whatever all the time. You can't. How are you gonna love somebody else if you can't love or how are you gonna love someone if you can't love yourself or whatever?
Yeah.
But like yeah, like it seems like a cop out, and like we do need people to love us unconditionally, but like it's when you're really down in the depths of yourself, you are hard to love. And like I get
Mm.
why people like stray away from people that like it's too much for them, and like hold you can't hold them like that against them, if they're
Mhm.
not part of your life anymore. And that's a part of the accepting of your mental illness,
Yeah.
or your diagnosis, is you're going to lose people, and that's a shitty that's really hard for like me. Like I don't want to lose people, because that's like my whole thing. I don't want to lose like abandonment issues, like
Yeah.
like send me into a spiral. Like I don't like even thinking about that, but it happens. And like it's just who the people who stay are the ones that are the really important ones. And but like people can't stay with stipulations too, you know what I mean? Like they can't be there whenever. Like it's a hard thing to say. Like you can't be like, you can't judge people for leaving, but like the people that are there, they can't just like they I don't know, they can't really pick and choose with you, you know what I mean? Like they can, but it sounds like I'm being really rude, but like when you're when you when you're in like my partner Caitlin or whatever, like she knows she's like down to like be there for me all the time, and I really appreciate that, because I'm always down for her to be there for her. But like I was with people that were not down, you know what I mean, and I was always down for them, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's sounds like really like rudimentary, me saying that way, but like it's just I was always take my shirt, like I was just
Yeah.
the backbone of the relationship, or I was like tried to be some sort of support system for the other person, and no one was ever my support system, and that really messed me up. So a part of like that's accepting that, like that part too, that those people that you really loved, like that you thought were going to be there for you for forever, they're not. So
Yeah.
that is probably the hardest part of accepting, is the losing people is probably the hardest part.
Yeah.
And then the easiest part of accepting it, I think, is just that you once you get through all of that, the easiest thing to accept is that like that whole like it sounds so silly, because I'm just doing it now and it feels really really good, but like who cares? Like just it sounds so silly, but like I get so worried about other people, what other people would think about me, or like what, but who cares? Like like worry about the people that worry about you, and like,
Yeah.
like, goodbye, like, do an honest day's work if that's what you're into. Like I'm not like the biggest capitalist or anything like that, but like, you know what I mean? Like go get your bread if you're getting your bread, you know what I mean? Like um you know what I mean? Like you just got to do what you got to do, and you got to do it for you. You can't do it for anybody else. And like if you have kids, that's a different story. Like I have two kids, so like one's my partner's and then one's mine, and like I definitely have to look out for my kids and my partner. But
Mhm.
like at the end of the day, like the work, the accepting, the radical acceptance that I have to do every day, that's the who cares? But like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the radical acceptance is like yeah, like you got to do it for you, and that's such a hard one for me to do because I don't like want to like myself, but I have to, you know.
Yeah. No, and I understand also being a good role model for them and showing them, hey, it doesn't matter, what may happen to you in this world. Just exactly who cares? Be you
Yeah,
and just do it with your all at the end
yeah,
of the day, right?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I that's a very interesting outlook, I guess you could say, on I guess where it started, where it all started,
yeah,
for you and how the healing looked like at first and how it was very hard. And then now you've kind of been able to progress yourself to being like, hey man, who cares? I'm doing
yeah.
me, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, that's and like holding myself accountable, that's like the biggest one. Like that was the thing that I never used to do as like a younger man or like a person that was like just newly diagnosed. Even like I was just wasn't holding myself accountable. And I definitely hold myself accountable to like my loved ones and like my community and stuff like that. And like the people that I love and like I want to hold myself accountable and like be, eventually, if I can be a paragon of virtue for my community, then maybe I can be a paragon of virtue for myself. So like it's like a weird double-edged sword where like I don't care, but I do care. It's like it's so and like it sounds like so juxtaposed and like very up and down, but it's like a very I think like it reflects like kind of like me because I'm very all over the place with like philosophy and like the way that like we should like kind of treat each other. Like there's certain things we should just definitely just always do for each other, like love each other, but like boundaries are super important and like we don't offer boundaries for each other in some capacity like as a society even like we're just like we cross too many boundaries with each other and stuff and like that's just like a thing that like I think we just as a whole as a human species we just need to like look at more. We just need to not cross crazy boundaries with like just like hurting each other and shit like that. So like, but I digress. So
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I get what you're saying for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned with BPD,
Hmm.
the okay, we're running a little low on time, but I really want to talk about this as well. So
Yeah.
with BPD, you mentioned that there's a lower rate than women or
Hmm.
lower rate of diagnosis for men than women.
Hmm.
Why do you think that is?
I honestly think a good portion of it has to do with like men themselves, and there's like the whole stigma with mental health with men. Even just like trying to be there for other dudes is pretty hard. Like
Mm.
there's always that thing like give your boy a ring, you never know what he's going through or whatever, but like it's hard reaching out to other dudes because they don't want to reciprocate. They've been told their whole lives that that's weird. So them just going into a place like all the guys that I saw there at like Access 24/7 because it's not just for mental health, it's for addiction too. They were there specifically. I'm quite sure we're for there for addiction because they were talking about it with the nurses. So for the front staff. So like and like no judgment towards them, whatever. Like addiction's addiction. You got to deal with that stuff. Like and like no harm, no foul. Like you gotta do what you gotta do. No judgment where you got how you got there. But like I was the only dude there going for a mental health thing that I knew of.
Mhm.
Um,
But
or
I'm gonna just step in quick. Most
yeah,
addictions stem from mental health illnesses.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
there, those guys might go to the addictions center and then they might be like, oh, you actually have this thing. So
yeah,
hopefully
totally.
that's where that thing. But they weren't there specifically for a mental illness thing. They might have that might have just been the whole like segue into them getting mental health like help. So and
Yeah.
I hope they did because
Mhm.
I see a lot of dudes that just like don't do it specifically. They don't care or they brush it off or whatever. And I think guys specifically with like borderline personality disorder, it's like it might just be like, oh, that guy just gets angry really easy, like that he's just got anger issues, that whole quote unquote thing. And like I don't want to there's always got to be a different angle and like I personally just haven't seen it and it's just like it's so low with men like I haven't seen uh I know that there's other definitely other men out there like I was looking on TikTok and I think like two dudes actually showed up and they have it and I was like oh that's cool And there's one guy that I know on Facebook that we've talked quite a bit, and he actually revealed a little while ago that he had it, and I didn't know. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't, and I think he just felt comfortable enough saying it. But I think that's that stigma too. He's an older man. He's like 40, and he's like, yeah, I have borderline personality. So I was like, oh, you're 40 and you have, like, that's crazy. Why didn't you? He's like, oh, I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And I was like, that's so, like, maybe there's also like the gender gap too, because like men, women, we have different conversations, which is kind of a silly thing. Like, that shouldn't be the thing. I know older generations, they definitely had like the guys were over here, the women were over here at the party, and like our generation, it's, and even Gen Xers or whatever, the generation before us, like they definitely commingled a lot more. But there was a boomer stigma, like, you know what I mean, like that
For
older
sure.
generation where they just didn't talk about mental illness, or like they dealt with it other ways,
Mhm,
and that permeated all the way down to us. And like it
mhm,
seems like silly and like benign to talk about, but it's like it's totally true. It's a generational thing. And
mhm,
I would say, I don't know specifically, but from what I've seen or like what I've read or heard, like men just throughout the ages just don't talk about that stuff at all. Like the closest they got to was like PTSD and shell shock and stuff like that. So in World War I it was shell shock, and then in Vietnam it was like PTSD and stuff like that. And then it got more into like more men's mental health stuff, but it all had to do with like some traumatic event. It had to be because of something. It wasn't
mhm,
just born with it. Yeah, there were schizophrenics running around and stuff like that, or whatever, or
mhm.
people with borderline personality disorder running around, but they just probably weren't diagnosed specifically borderline personality disorder. I shouldn't say schizophrenia because schizophrenia is a little bit more serious, but like it's funny because there's a funny joke with people with borderline, but they call it schizophrenia light because you have so many conflicting things going on inside of you. But it's schizophrenia. You don't hear voices. So but yeah, I would say like just men in general. It's like the whole conversation. I know that the conversation is getting better. Like there's Men's Mental Health Month or whatever, and um, just in general, I see a lot more like influencers like on TikTok and blah blah blah. Like, and specifically guys. Like there's this one guy. I think his name's Chaz Aiden or whatever. He did the whole thing where he got diagnosed with his like ADHD and a bunch of other things, and like that was a whole thing he did on TikTok. And like a lot of dudes were like, "That's so wicked! I'm so proud of you." But that's good, and I really like that. But like, yeah, like it has to. I think it has to get more men are getting diagnosed, or at least getting checked up before they, we'll see any kind of increase in borderline percent. Not that we want to see an increase in men or women at all with
Yeah,
borderline. We want to see a decrease in mental illness, and I think that has a whole thing with like diet and the way that we uh, go about our society, the way that we treat each other and stuff
oh, for
like
sure.
that. The
Yeah,
the 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 people that own all the money. So like all of those guys, like they make us very, like not good with each other. But anyway, I think it really has stuff to do with it has to do with just men not having a conversation with themselves. I think that is a really good start. I would say as a man,
yeah,
having go through another person to tell me, like my partner specifically. So
yeah. So if you were to give advice to anybody who feels like maybe they do have BPD, or if they have been diagnosed and they're in the midst of the forgiveness or acceptance stage, what would you say?
I would say for people that aren't diagnosed, or like are curious, just go and get checked. It might take a while. Like I know definitely I got lucky. I know it took a lot of people like a really long time, and some people it takes a really short time.
Mhm,
But always advocate for yourself. Always keep going. Always keep trying. If a doctor tells you no and you still think something's wrong, go to a different doctor,
mhm,
because some doctors aren't always like, one doctor isn't always right. It's called a second opinion for a reason. So
yeah,
definitely do. And then people with borderline personality disorder, especially newly diagnosed, hang in there. It's gonna be okay. Like I remember the first year was really really hard for me, and I was really lucky to have some people to tell me about some things, and I was really lucky to have some friendships that um, specifically people with borderline that were just they were very solid at the time, and they really were like enriching and enlightening for me. So, and like seek your community out, like go and it doesn't have to be like a borderline community or borderline personality community. It can be like your whatever your bowling community, or your makeup community, or whatever your if you go to the gay bar or whatever, and there you're really like liked there, and everyone knows you, that's your community. Whatever, if you can talk to them, whoever you can talk to, and them not judge you, and them offer you support, talk
Mhm.
to them. It'd be literally anyone, your grandma. Like it,
Mm.
just get what you need, because the after that it's hard without community, without support, and that's part of accepting yourself too, is accepting your community. And it's hard to accept help, especially like neurodivergent people can't accept help, and like borderline personality disorder, you don't want to be a burden. You don't want people to abandon you. You want to do everything you can to just stay with me, I love you, so like
Mm.
um do and take things slow, take things really slow, especially if you're starting any kind of relationships are really hard for people with borderline personality disorder. So if you're starting a relationship, or you're in a relationship, and you got diagnosed with borderline, or you whatever you think you have borderline, take things slow.
Mhm.
Passion is a killer for us, so just take things slow. Try and think before you leap, and that's all I can say. That's really all I can. That's all the advice I could give someone with
Okay.
borderline disorder.
Thank you so much. Honestly, this was really, really enlightening, and I'm sure that others will also feel the same way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
I glad I could help, and I can't wait to secure it. So
yeah, totally. Okay, well, we'll stay in touch, and you'll see this soon. And thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciated chatting with you.
yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.